Good evening and welcome to January's Rotary Membership Action Plan. In August, we talked about enjoyable meetings. This month's topic will cover three more of the five club experience elements: personal growth opportunities, connections, and meaningful service. To get us started, we're going to do things a little differently, and you will soon see more about why. As part of those changes, instead of the usual path, I want to introduce our Zone 33 Innovative Club Advocate and MAP Team Lead for this month's webinar, Sean Sawyer, to set the stage. Sean, take it away, buddy.
Andy, thank you. And thanks to all of you for being here today as the people who see the value in being part of these monthly conversations. Now, as you've seen from the title, this month we want to continue to focus on what Andy mentioned as the five club experience elements. You'll recall that back in August, we had a first conversation about one of those, meeting enjoyment. And for February, we intend to share another in the form of confidence in club leadership. But for today, what we want to do is concentrate on the three others, being personal growth opportunities, connections, and meaningful service, particularly regarding the importance and value that each of these carries. Now, to draw an analogy, with today being in the middle of those three occasions, I'll start with a reminder of Rotary's historic membership patterns as a whole. As Rotary's number one internal priority, we constantly place huge emphasis on the front side of that continuum by exploring ways to grow our ranks. And at the other end of the spectrum, we also try to gain insight into why members have left. But let's not forget, 20 years ago, Rotary had 1.2 million members. And over the last 20 years, Rotary has gained something like 3 million new ones. But now, 20 years later, we're still 1.2 million members. Mathematically, that doesn't make sense until we acknowledge that while we're good at finding them and are even sometimes interested in why they leave, we haven't always done our best to concentrate efficiently, or maybe better yet, proactively, how to go about keeping members and not just keeping them, but constantly offering reasons for members to want to stay. That's what those five club experience elements focus on. So if we get better at providing that, we will certainly have less losses to overcome, and our organization will absolutely grow. So, to give examples of what that can look like, we have planned today to share with you two personal journeys regarding what those three things, personal growth, opportunities, connections, and meaningful service, can look like, and then perhaps be adapted, adopted, and even duplicated for the benefit of all of our members, regardless of where our club might be located. So, without further ado, let's jump right into the first of those, proudly and personally shared by someone who is not only commonly referred to as our Rotary International Director for Zones 33 and 34, but a Rotarian, just like me and you, Patrick Eakes. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. And you are so right. It's an incredible honor to serve as your director on the Rotary International Board, but I never forget that it's a temporary gig. And just like you, I'm a Rotarian first. As Sean and Andy mentioned more than once, this month's MAP discussion focuses on more about the five club experience elements, specifically personal growth opportunities, connections, and meaningful service. So I want to share a bit about my personal growth as a leader and specifically about learning to speak in public. I invite you to join me in the Wayback Machine as we travel to 2001. I took the podium in July of that year as a new club president. As is common with many club presidents, I'd been in Rotary just over 3 years. What was uncommon, though, was that our club was 130 members strong and had a distinguished history, especially in support of the Rotary Foundation. Most of our club presidents had served in a variety of roles for a decade or more before taking the gavel. I was just 34 years old and a relative newcomer. I knew that I better bring my A game to be successful. I prepared thoroughly before my first meeting as president. I scheduled the business section of our meeting a week in advance, made a detailed agenda timed to the minute, and reconfirmed all those who would speak during the meeting. Just like an engineer that I am, I thought I was totally ready to go. At that first meeting as president, I rang the bell and welcomed our members and guests. We had an invocation and recited the Pledge of Allegiance. When it was time to get to the meat of the business section of our meeting, I looked down at my printed agenda and was unable to read it. That's right, I could not read the printed words on the agenda. My eyesight wasn't the issue. It was the fact that I was holding the agenda in my hands, both of which were shaking so much that I could not read the words. Like many people, I was really nervous about speaking in public, despite all my careful preparations. I was standing in front of a room of about 100 friends, people who had voted me into this office, and my anxiety was getting the best of me. I placed the agenda on the podium carefully, took a deep breath, and continued with the program. I got through the rest of the meeting, but at its conclusion, I was not feeling great about my first official function as club president. After that first meeting, our club's president-elect, Carl Treelevin, gently provided me with a few pointers on how to be more effective when speaking in public. I didn't know it then, but Carl is a distinguished Toastmaster, and he's since moved to Florida and become a leader in Zone 34 for over a decade. But on that day, he was just a friend helping me develop as a public speaker and leader. A couple of months later, Joe Gothrop, one of our club's founders and age 86 at that time, asked me to drive him to our weekly club meeting. During our short drive, Joe gave me two important pieces of advice. He told me that audiences want their speakers to be good. They start out on the speaker's side. So he said, just relax and treat each public speaking opportunity as a home game. He also reminded me that the audience has no idea what I plan to say. So if I stray a bit from my planned message, I can just return to my message. No one but me will know. Joe had lectured and conducted seminars all over the world, including a major address to the Parliament of India. We knew what he was talking about, and I've carried that advice with me for almost 25 years. Rotary kept putting me at podiums, on stages, and on Zoom calls like this to speak. And while I may not embody the adage, practice makes perfect, I'm comfortable speaking to small groups or audiences over 1,000 people, and I do so multiple times every week. The advice and encouragement of my friends contributed greatly to my development as a leader and are a huge part of why I'm still a proud Rotarian today. Another invaluable part of Rotary membership is meaningful service. In my case, the most meaningful service has included my family. My children have participated in dozens of Rotary service projects since they were under the age of 10. They started by packing meals for Meals of Hope and serving meals at our local homeless shelter and the Boys and Girls Club. Our children also volunteered at a local event sponsored by several Rotary clubs called Pigstock. It's a barbecue festival that raises money for Children of Vietnam. Children of Vietnam supports education for girls and young women. They assist families with disabled children, and they provide nutritious meals for thousands of school children. My children gladly gave their time and effort in service to children halfway around the world who they almost certainly would never meet. Eventually, they took on leadership roles at Pigstock and now coordinate all the judges, most of whom are adult Rotary leaders. After a decade of volunteering at Pigstock, this is the one event they simply will not miss, even though they have to travel home from college to do so. I believe that the desire to serve others resides in our DNA, and Rotary projects have activated that gene in my children. Watching them engage in meaningful service and grow as leaders at such a young age has been perhaps the most valuable part of my Rotary experience. Rotary has shaped my children as people and as leaders. You know, when I said that my children have been raising money for other children they'd almost certainly never meet, well, that's certainly what we believed over the last decade of volunteering at Pigstock. 4 years ago, our daughter was one of two incoming college freshmen in a class of over 5,000 who was awarded a 4-year scholarship at North Carolina State based on her record of scholarship and leadership. Now, as a senior, she's tasked with designing a service project for the dozen current scholars in the program. What did Sarah Eakes choose? Sarah leveraged her connections with Rotary, with Children of Vietnam, and her scholars program to design a 10-day service trip to Da Nang, Vietnam. She and the other scholars will be part of Children of Vietnam's largest in-country fundraiser and will participate as volunteers in several of the organization's service programs. I couldn't be prouder of Sarah that the other scholars that they're giving up a traditional spring break party week to serve children in Vietnam. And I couldn't be more thankful to Rotary for playing such a large role in our children's development. When we undertake meaningful service, we improve the lives of others. But often the life most changed is our own. That's been true for my children and for me. What an incredible dividend from my membership in Rotary. I've said many times that even if I wanted to leave Rotary, I couldn't. My children would veto that decision. Rotary is that important to them, and of course, to me too. Tonight's webinar is the second of three that focuses on the 5 club experience elements. As you can tell from the stories I've shared, Rotary has been instrumental in my personal growth as a person and leader, and Rotary has provided service opportunities that have been life-changing, not only for those we serve, but also for my family and for me. That's why I'm a Rotarian and why I always will be. Sean, thanks for the chance to share a bit about why Rotary is an indispensable part of my life. Back to you, my friend.
Patrick, thank you for that reminder that no matter what any of our Rotary titles may convey or what path we've taken to be where we are, we should never lose sight of what Rotary truly is and can be for all of us and for our future generations as well, not only from the perspective of personal growth, but in performing meaningful service as well. Now, we've all heard, likely more than once, our current RI president, Stephanie Yurchik, tell us that the success and growth of our organization is based upon our efforts and success in creating and, more importantly, maintaining irresistible clubs. But do not lose sight that our motto is service above self, not service without self. So to share another example of what this can look like from a different but equally personal angle, I want to introduce to all of you Lisa Haslett. Among other roles in the last 13 years, Lisa has served as president of the Crescent Rotary Club in Greensboro, North Carolina, during which term her club received the District Membership Growth Award. Since that time, she proceeded to become her district's public image chair, as well as its membership engagement chair. And of course, near to my heart in particular, she is a professional vocalist and musician. So not only can she share testimony in a heavenly voice about her development in Rotary, both what she put into it as well as what she has gotten from it, but also about her efforts in developing leaders, while also during her own networking. So without further ado, Lisa, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for reading that introduction word for word like I gave it to you. I'm fortunate that I'm actually in the same Rotary Club as Patrick Eek, so I have had a front row view to his development. I just was unaware that I was watching his development. That's how good he is. But for me, Rotary changed my life. It sounds dramatic, but it's actually quite simple. I joined Rotary because I needed to develop a new network, specifically a network of people who could afford to pay for or who could refer me to people who could afford to pay for private duty home care. As Sean mentioned, prior to Rotary, I actually spent 17 years on the road touring as a professional singer and actress. And in fact, music is how I was introduced to Rotary. I was invited to present a program to Gate City Rotary Club, also here in Greensboro, in 2007. And that one program got me on the program circuit for the Greensboro Rotary Clubs. So flash forward to 2011, and I had transitioned from the theater to private duty home care. And my network of singers and actors were not going to help me grow a book of business in home care. I don't know if you know a lot about singers and actors, but they're typically not flush with money. But I remembered Rotary and I reached out to two clubs. The club that had been my introduction to Rotary and a second club that had invited me to perform at their annual fundraiser, where Patrick Eakes was the MC. So my intro club was a 7 a.m. club. I don't do anything at 7 a.m. But the second club was a Monday lunch club. And I visited 3 times. I enjoyed most of the people and the camaraderie of the club. But I joined Rotary specifically looking for a networking opportunity. What I found was so much more. I found a group of professionals and community leaders who were bound by a test. Fortunately, this wasn't a test of intelligence, but rather a test of integrity. And for months, years, I stood with everyone else. I said the words and then I sat down. There was one time one of our past presidents made us sing the four-way test, but I have tried to block out that memory. My second year in the club, our president, Barry Utesh, asked me to serve as membership chair, and I said, sure. I would not say that that was a successful year. I had ideas, but I didn't have the leadership skills to implement and execute. Joining the board is where I really started to understand the inner workings of my club. More importantly, I saw how I could have an impact through club service. I started working behind the scenes and I took over public image for the club. When our executive secretary passed away unexpectedly in December of 2018, I was able to step into her role. And as it coincided with my year as president-elect, I used the opportunity to change systems that were antiquated so that by the time my year as president began, the changes had been implemented. I was president from July of 2019 through June of 2020. The first 9 months were awesome. We had so many new members that we would turn the meeting into a new member palooza and induct them as a team. We were creating cohorts of new members. As an alternative to talking head programs, we introduced days of fun. We assigned members a day to sponsor the program. We had live music. We had a go-kart manufacturer. We played Candyland for polio. Candyland for polio launched a district event, Cornhole for Cart. We were on fire. And then COVID. And I had a meltdown. I doubted my ability to lead during the pandemic. And so I leaned on my mentors. Patrick Eakes was one of them. I had probably 5, maybe 7 mentors. And I led by doing what was best for the club. So Crescent Rotary Club was the first club in our district to pivot to Zoom, missing only 1 meeting. We used our lunch money to support frontline workers and local nonprofits who didn't have the luxury of quarantining. We used COVID as an opportunity to lead and serve in our community. And opportunity is an important word because I know so many other clubs saw COVID as a challenge, but we really saw it as an opportunity. And as a result of pivoting our mindset, our club earned the Governor's Platinum Club Award and the highest membership growth award with plus 14 new members. None of these things would have happened if Rotary hadn't provided me with the opportunity to develop as a leader. When others tried to shush me, Rotary listened and took note. When others marginalized me, Rotary lifted me up. I was a failed country singer when I came to Rotary. And now I'm the president of the Nussbaum Center for Entrepreneurship, North Carolina's largest small business incubator. This transformation would not have happened without the connections that I made through Rotary. If my sponsor, Abby Donnelly, hadn't seen me as an entrepreneur, as well as a marketing genius, my words, not hers, she would not have recommended me for my current role, and Patrick Eakes would not have recommended me for my current role. Rotary is what led me here. I joined Rotary for networking, but I stay in Rotary because of the leadership development opportunities it has provided me. The next time you invite someone to attend a meeting or a discovery hour, ask them one question. What is missing from your life? And then show and tell them how Rotary can fill that empty space. Friendship, networking, leadership development, and service. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks, Sean. Back to you.
Lisa, thank you back. What a fantastic personal journey you've taken. And we can't thank you and Patrick enough for sharing with us what personal growth opportunities can come if you take advantage of them, the connections you can make if you welcome them, and how much meaningful service you can accomplish if you seek it. So, again, the moral of this month's story is the continuing tale of the importance and particularly the value to oneself and others of exploring, creating, and maintaining the right club experience. So at this time, what we'd like to do is give all of you a chance to ask questions, perhaps directed toward one or both of our two presenters, or if you would prefer more generally, to the entire group that's on the call. All we would ask is that given the size of the group and the format of the call, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. And I and Mary will do our best to bring each question to everyone's attention for either an answer while maintaining the professionalism of the call or perhaps allowing it to lead into sort of a discussion. And if we would miss a question or if we run out of time to be able to address them all, I would invite anyone to submit their questions to me via email, and I will later do whatever may be necessary to solicit from our presenters an answer and reply to you with it. Now, we've already received a few questions during the course of the presentations and since I started summarizing. So while I will start with those, please continue to type them in and we'll address those next. Or if you have your own answer to the question being asked, please feel free to type that into the chat as well. So, not to put our panelists in the hot seat, but here's a couple that have come in during the course of everyone's presentation. How is it your club creates connections for its members? Either of you have an answer to that question that you'd like to share?
I'll jump in on that first. For starters, basically every Thursday we have a Thirsty Thursday. We have a social event in the evening. You can be thirsty for adult beverages. You can be thirsty for water or coffee. You can be thirsty for whatever. But it's a great opportunity not only for our members, but for those who would be members to find out more about our club and about our members and to do so in a relaxed environment, right? You know, one-on-one conversations instead of attending a meeting that's got some of those, you know, those things that resemble church, the things that we go through every week. So I think that's a great way for our connections to get built.
I think another way is golf. I'm not a golfer. Patrick is a golfer. We have a large number of members who love taking part in the district golf outings, the zone golf outings, the Rotary International golf outings. But we actually, a few years ago, we started the social membership option so that people that were interested in, again, if you go back to the opportunities that Rotary presents, friendship is one of them. And in fact, I had the pleasure of sitting next to Rotary International President Stephanie Urchik at our foundation banquet. And if you ask President Stephanie why she joined Rotary for friendship. So we have a social membership so that those folks that are looking for friendship, they can join as a social member. Now, what we have found that happens is while they join for the social activities, while they're participating in those social activities, they learn more about the impact that we're having and the service projects. And then they start to recognize that, hey, I can hang out with my friends and build a ramp on this person's home or serve dinner to the homeless or work at a mobile market. So we have really been very successful in turning our service projects and our community projects into connection and networking opportunities for our club.
Speaking of social, there's a question in the chat, Lisa. Could you briefly share just a few more details about the logistics of that Candyland event that you mentioned?
Sure. So there was an article in The Atlantic, which is a magazine, about Candyland. And I don't know how many of y'all may or may not know this, but Candyland was actually created for children in the polio wards. In the 50s and 60s, the children that were in the polio wards were of all different ages, right? So you had some kids who could read, some who could identify colors, some who knew their numbers. but you didn't necessarily have the same age group of children in these polio wards. And so a teacher created Candyland specifically for the children in the polio wards. So we decided to turn it into a fundraiser. Corinne Allman, who was my vice president, ran around to all the used bookstores and bought up all the copies of Candyland that she could buy. And I think we paid like $2 per game or something like that. And then members had to ante in. So it cost you $15 to play. Now, it just so happened that the Monday that we were going to do Candyland for polio, it happened to be a Guilford County Schools day off. It was a holiday. So I said, bring your kids. We actually changed our lunch buffet. So we did chicken tenders, we did mac and cheese, we did French fries, we did a kid-friendly buffet. And I told our members, you can bring your kids to the meeting. However, you still have to ante in for them. And so every single person that came that day anteed in $15. We had Connect Four, we had Candyland, we had Cornhole. It literally became a game day, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? It became a game day at our Rotary Club meeting. I have pictures of longtime members sitting at tables playing Candyland with each other. And so every $15 got donated to Polio Plus.
Wow, that's fantastic. We've got so many more questions. We're not going to have time to get to all of them. Let me pick a few out of here. Here's one. What was the name of the entrepreneur program that you created? Did you mention it?
I work for a small business incubator called the Nussbaum Center for Entrepreneurship. Here, I can type it into the chat for you.
Okay. Here's a couple. Anybody have a couple of key ways to attract new members under the age of 40?
That's
Anything here?
actually why we started the Thirsty Thursdays that Patrick mentioned. So during COVID, we had a group of about 12 to 15 members who were meeting at the Nussbaum Center. We were still doing hybrid meetings, but we had a ragtag group that still wanted to get together for lunch. So I offered up my classroom at the Nussbaum Center. And we noticed that attendance was starting to fall down with the hybrid meetings, but we couldn't go back to meeting in person yet. The place that we hosted our meetings wasn't available.
Right.
And so I put it out to the 12 to 15 people in the room. Does anybody have any ideas on how we can A, increase engagement, and B, increase attraction? And our current president, Brian Lee, raised his hand and said, how about a happy hour? And I said, well, we actually used to do a happy hour. Will you run it? Because my big thing has always been, I will say yes to anything, but you have to agree to run it. Don't just come to me with ideas. I need you to be able to hit the ground running with it. And Brian Lee said, yes, he would. And so I said, what day? Thursday. What time? 5 o'clock. Where are we going to do it? Craft City. And so because of these Thirsty Thursdays that we started in 2020, we have been able to recruit a number of younger members through those events. And we do move it around. So we have it at various locations throughout Greensboro. And we invite other clubs to participate with us so that they also have an opportunity to recruit younger
Right.
members.
Since we're on the topic of growing Rotary and yourself, here's one. Do you encourage your members to share their business or profession during the meetings? And if so, how do you include it?
I know we both have answers for this. I won't step on some of what you did. It was so great, Lisa. But yeah, I mean, we for instance, last year, people were interested in what my business does. So I hosted a meeting at my business. People came, they're like, oh, that's what you do. There's an application for that with this client I have, all those types of things. But in addition, we've had club meetings that were either panels of, say, we have a small commercial general contractor, a residential general contractor, maybe somebody who's doing institutional work, and they do a panel discussion about what's happening in construction or insurance or banking. So we have those types of opportunities. And then I know Lisa did something that was really cool when she was president. I'll let her talk about that.
So I created a whole new role. I created a networking czar role. Abby Donnelly, who was my sponsor, one of Patrick's great friends as well. Abby wrote a book called Networking Works. And so as my networkings are, we actually did quarterly networking events during our regular club meetings. And those networking events ranged from everyone drawing numbers when they arrived. And so you had to sit with people that you didn't normally sit with. And then you would specifically talk about their businesses, what they did, who makes a good referral for them. We did a business fair, and by lottery, I think we had 10 members who signed up, and they set up their tables where they were able to bring marketing materials. And then the rest of our members would walk around and talk to them to learn more about their business, and they were able to pick up marketing materials. Rotary has many special interest groups. Rotary Means Business is one of them. So I highly recommend, if connecting your members to member businesses is important to you, to look at the groups that Rotary has. You can find them on Facebook, you can find them on the RI website, but there are a lot of ideas out there of how to promote business in Rotary so you don't have to start new. You can blueprint, you can copy what's already out there.
We've mentioned the word irresistible more than once tonight, several of us. A question from Rich is, when a new member joins, what do they receive at the induction, and what has worked well and created the excitement that we're all trying to maintain while we do this?
Well, today our new member received Patrick's major donor pin.
Well, yeah, it was the first time I think I have inducted a new member since I was the club president back in 2001, 2002. But it was a younger Rotarian, I think she's 34, 35, who joined. And so the president asked me to conduct the induction. So the two parts of what you asked, Sean, first off, I wrote a script and I wanted to make sure that it was a big deal. I mean, I talked to her about all that comes with being a Rotarian, being welcome at Rotary clubs around the world. Toward the end, I had all of our members stand and addressed her directly about the fact that she was entering a family that's very special. In terms of what we presented to her, we apparently were out of our Rotary pin, so I took off my Rotary pin and gave her that. We gave her a red badge, which is a program that a lot of clubs use. Was actually started by our club, at least in the eastern half of the country, back in 1999. And that just identifies her as a newer member so that our existing members will take a moment to say hello if they've not met her before. And then also a four-way test plaque that she can put on her desk or on her office wall. So that's what we present to her. But along the way, of course, we've been educating her about what Rotary is, what's expected of her, what she can expect to get from Rotary as well. And part of my speech was to implore our members to be a part of her orientation and her onboarding and educating her about what Rotary is all about, because that it's really important during those first couple of years.
And then
Well,
we have a blue badge checklist. So once she received her red badge, she now has a checklist of activities before she can get her blue badge. And it's things like visiting 3 other clubs, participating in a service project, doing your 1-minute member talk. But the idea is that we move them from red badge to blue badge as quickly as possible, but we do that by engaging them in the work of the club.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left. Let's flip to the other end of that spectrum. How do you address member burnout as Rotary activities or meetings or projects may demand a lot of time each month or, annually or however it may be organized from the different members when they're not so new anymore?
I say quite simply, Rotary is a choice. And you can choose to be highly active. You can choose to take time off. Rotary will always be there for you. When you're ready to come back, come back.
I was gonna, yeah, give
But then
permission.
follow up with your members, right? Patrick will remember when we were on the board, our board members had a certain number of members that sort of you were responsible for checking in on. And so even just because something in their life has changed, doesn't mean that they're no longer part of the club. So making sure that we're still communicating with them and checking in on them. Do you need anything? You know, COVID was a big one of those. We weren't seeing each other at all. So we made sure that the board reached out to our members on a regular basis just to check in. How are you? Are you okay? Do you need anything? We're having these lunches. Do you want to come? But recognizing that life happens and sometimes Rotary has to take a back seat so that they can prioritize family or work.
Right.
Yeah.
How about encouraging gender balance in your club or others that you've worked with? Is that ever a priority that comes up as well?
I think so. I think for starters, I think we've done a good job of promoting some very talented ladies in our club, Lisa included, and we have had frankly, probably about 50% female presidents over the last 6 to 8 years. Our president-elect is female, and I think that's a big part of it. I think if a prospective member walks in the room and always sees men at the podium, it doesn't exactly project that this is a club where women are maybe as welcome as they should be or have as many opportunities. And these haven't been, some type of quota pick. These are very talented ladies who've been leading our club, like I said, Lisa included. So I think that's a big part of it.
Well,
I
we've
think,
got,
I mean, to some extent, you need to be intentional about it too. So the year that I was president, we had an all-female slate of officers, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. And that was intentional. So I will say you can't just say we want more women in the club, but then not do things to attract women. And so that goes back to your previous question, Sean. Sometimes life happens. And if you look at, the majority of the time, the caregiver in a family of parents is going to be the woman. The caregiver in charge of the child rearing is going to be the woman. And so it can hinder a woman's ability to be involved as much as she may like, but it doesn't mean that they don't still have something to offer. And so let them be involved as much as they can and not make them feel bad about it.
And at the times that they can.
Yes.
we've got several offers to replace your pen, Patrick. We've also got several requests for a copy of your induction speech. But here's a toughie. And if you all have a good answer to this one, you may have solved a lot of the world's problems in short fashion. What
Oh,
are
then I'm
the,
giving this to Patrick.
in what way or ways does your club battle attrition? We talked about growth. We talked about life happens. And half of those losses are unavoidable. What about the other half of your attrition? How do you battle that while you've got all these other things going on?
Well, I mean, some of what Lisa has described, especially the initiatives when she was president, go directly to that in ways of engaging members in new and fun and informative ways. Things like having business fairs, things like having game days. We bowl every year for one meeting, usually in March or April. We say, hey, we're not getting together for the normal thing. We're having pizza and salad, and we're bowling. We do things like this to mix it up, to have new energy. We have things like the Thirsty Thursday that increase the interaction because, as I said in my remarks, I couldn't leave Rotary if I wanted to. My children would veto it. I mean, that's a big piece of the value of my membership. But for other people, it's other things. And we have to be sure that we're constantly giving a wide a la carte selection of ways for members to plug in and that they know that they're welcome to pick and choose the things that really appeal to them.
We have to give them a return on investment.
Absolutely.
Well, here's a similar question, and you may have already given part of the answer too, but have you found that there are similar reasons for younger members joining or not joining Rotary? You've mentioned the social aspects, you've meant Thursdays. What about just that younger demographic in general?
Well, I think some of that speaks to that personal growth opportunity. That's frequently when I'm speaking to someone who's younger, I'll say, look, you've got an opportunity to bring forward a project and design it and to lead it. You have an opportunity to lead others. You have have these opportunities to grow as a person in the areas that you want to grow. And I think especially for younger professionals, that's a real opportunity. They may not get it at work. We're not a country now made up of few corporations that are enormous. We're a country made up of a whole lot of small businesses. And sometimes that doesn't give those growth opportunities. There are a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4 employee companies where vertical mobility is just, it's not there. So that's something that Rotary can offer in terms of personal growth, leadership growth, learning to speak in public, those types of things.
Yeah.
And so what I would say too for the younger people is if the only thing that your club is selling is service, you're asking them to give what they may already have too little of, and that's time. So that's why I encourage you to look at the other opportunities that Rotary offers. And so to Patrick's point, Rotary offers professional development, and the cost of being in Rotary for how much professional development you get, there's not a better deal out there. I mean, what is it, $1,200 a year to be a member of our club, I think, Patrick? So,
And you get fed for that
and
too.
you get fed, right? But if the only thing your club is selling is service, you're selling a time sucker. And if people don't have that time, it's why people are going to say no to you. So again, if you're focusing on the friendship opportunities and the leadership development opportunities and the business networking opportunities, that's your return on investment. That's how you sell Rotary. And again, they might join for friendship, they might join for professional development, they might join for business networking. But once they get in the door and they start seeing and hearing the impact that the clubs are having in their community, that's what gets them engaged, and that's what keeps them there.
Lisa posed a great question, and I won't get it verbatim, but she said, ask a prospect what's missing from his or her life, and then explain how Rotary can provide that. I think that's a great approach.
Yeah. It's almost 6:15, so if there are folks that need to leave, that's okay. Feel free, but I'm hearing a voice in my other ear that says that we will stay on closer to 6:30 for additional discussion. Here's another question, and it's lengthy, so I'll do my best to interpret it, I think, the way it's meant to be interpreted. Does your club make a conscious effort to avoid the stereotypical stand up, pledge, sing a song, sit down, a little business, have a speaker, see you next week format, and instead include during your time together an opportunity during the meeting for members to network and opportunities for growth, or maybe even strategize about it? Is that ever done in the open forum, or is that more reserved for the board setting, or what's it look like?
Lisa, you want to talk about what Alec did last year?
Yeah. I would say that we do a little we do a little bit of everything. Like we try to adhere to the ritual of Rotary, but at the same time, in the middle of our meeting, we have a meet and greet, and it's a timed meet and greet. The president gives us a question from the podium, and the objective is to get up and go to a different part of the room and have a conversation with someone who is not sitting at your table. And the conversation can be whatever the question is that the president gave us for that day, or you can have a different conversation if you choose to. But Alec Prado, who is our immediate past president, he started doing that last year. And again, as I think probably every Rotary Club has experienced, you get people who sit at the same table with the same people week after week after week. And so for a newer member, it can be intimidating because they don't know who to sit with or where to sit. And so with this meet and greet, it gives new members the opportunity to be approached by older members, or at the same time, it gives them the opportunity to go approach a member that they may have been wanting to meet.
So even the person I inducted today, when she was visiting and we would have that social time, I'd say, hey, let's go over here. This is an interesting person for you to meet, to start getting her into the swim of how we do things and to meet new people.
And so I'd say to, the question going back to the whole business networking thing, if you know what your club members do for a living, it's a lot easier to introduce them to other members of your club who can be beneficial to them. I've had members who call me and say, do you know anybody who sells benefits? And I'm like, yeah, you know that guy you sit next to at lunch every day? He owns a benefits company.
Right.
Hey, my mom is getting older and I need to move her into a retirement community. Do you know anybody? Yeah, you know the girl with the curly hair? That's her business. So again, if you it just weaves together. That's the easiest way I can think of to explain it.
Here's a couple of fairly objective questions. Can either of you expand a little bit about what the Red Badge program is? Many of us have heard it. You know, several clubs do it different ways. It's kind of an introductory period, if you will, as I understand it, like the different colored hats in the mines, if you will, up here in Appalachia. How does the Red Badge program work with a little more specificity? Could you share that with the group?
I'll jump in first. The person who preceded me as president, who was president in 2001, she brought this to us from the Arcadia Rotary Club in California. And she said, it's not to ostracize anybody. It just instead of a typical Russell Hampton blue perimeter or circumference stripe, it has a red stripe. And all it does is indicate this is a person who is newer to our club, is going through the checklist that Lisa mentioned, meaning that person is going to attend a board meeting and attend a social event and a service project and those types of things. And we hope that it will cause our existing members to want to come over and say, "Hi, Christy, it's great to meet you. I'm such and such. We're really glad you're a part of this club." It's just just a little trigger to hopefully increase some interaction there and recognize we have a newer member because we're a larger club. It's hard to know everybody as well as you'd like to, and when a new member joins, that's an opportunity. But sometimes you need just a little bit of prompt. And then, as Lisa said before, the red badge converts to a typical, what would be typical for us, a blue perimeter badge, when that checklist has been completed. And of course, the checklist is also designed to create interaction and education for that newer member.
Yeah, a lot of what we do, if not everything we do, is geared towards creating and strengthening engagement within our club.
Yep.
If your members are engaged, you don't have to worry as much about attrition. If your members are engaged, they're going to recruit new members for you, and that solves the attraction problem.
Yeah, engagement is the key to both attraction and attrition.
Yeah, it really is. And so the checklist is geared towards engagement. So going to a board meeting, going to a foundation board meeting, participating in a service project, going to a social meeting or a social activity. We also require all of our first year members are in charge. They have to work on the fundraiser that year. Every new member is required to sign up for a committee of their choice. We don't tell them which one. We encourage all of our new members to join the Sergeant at Arms Committee because the best way to meet members in our club is to sit at that front table and greet people as they walk in the door. If you check their name off of that check-in sheet, you've got a face to put it with, you're going to learn their names. And so all of that is part of that checklist, but the ultimate goal of that checklist is engagement.
Gotcha. And Terry has actually put in the chat a link to the orientation onboarding toolbox that describes Red Badge program.
Yeah, I will tell you, as much as I would love to tell you that I'm a genius, I'm a genius in that I find good ideas and I copy them. The stuff that we are doing, we're not inventing a new mousetrap. But what we are doing is looking at what other clubs are doing and what is successful for other clubs, and then we're pulling it in-house, but we're adapting it. And I guess the best example I could give of that, so Ron Pierce, who's our incoming district governor,
Sure.
DG-elect, he was president of his club the year before I was president of my club, Crescent Rotary Club. And I watched a lot of what Ron did with the Guilford Club, and I recognized that I didn't have the skills that Ron had when it came to technology. It didn't mean that I couldn't do what he was doing, but I had to dumb it down so that I could do it. And that's how we came up with a lot of the things that we did that year, was we took ideas that we saw working at other clubs and we dumbed them down to what we could handle as a club. And that's how we had success. But I give credit where credit is due. I try to make sure that other clubs, other presidents, other leaders know, hey, we see what you're doing and we're going to take that and we're going to blueprint it for ourselves.
All right. All right. We've got time for two more. I think I've picked out the right two. One, folks have heard about this social membership. In your club, is that something that's separate? And if it is, are there different parameter new structure? Or do you use that term what just relates to one of the aspects of general membership overall?
It's an active member. It's $75 a quarter. They are required to pay their $100 up front for Paul Harris as well. And then they are required to participate in social events. So they have to come to the fundraiser. They have to go to Thirsty Thursdays. None of our different membership categories are designed to get you out of doing anything. The objective is that we get you engaged in what's most interesting and most appealing to you.
Are Thirsty Thursdays weekly or are they less often?
Every Thursday night, we rotate around. Every week, we'll get an email from Brian Lee telling us where and when and to invite guests.
Gotcha. All right, I'm going to ask you one more. This might be the toughest one.
Patrick, you're up.
But it's too tempting to not ask this one because I think it'll help encompass more of the masses of the folks that are on the call. Do you have any suggestions how you could translate all the advice and the suggestions you've given to a club that meets virtually versus yours that meets in person?
Well, I think a lot of what we've talked about can be translated. I mean, the Thirsty Thursdays, you're not going to name the local establishment where you're going to meet, but you can still get together, bring the drink of your choice and have purely social time Thursday evening. That can still happen. When you are bringing in new members, there's still that opportunity to make it a big deal. There's still that opportunity for them to understand, yes, you're in a virtual club, but you are still welcome when you go to a terrestrial club anywhere in the world. Most of what we're talking about can be adapted for e-clubs. Lisa, you're probably more creative than I am. What?
So, again, since COVID hit 9 months into my year, we had to pivot and doing everything virtual for the last 3 months. And so we did trivia. Karen Pollard, who is our district governor nominee. She found a company to come in and do trivia for us. So we actually did a Zoom fundraiser and it was trivia. We do Member Jeopardy. You can do Member Jeopardy via Zoom and you just have people type their guesses into the chat box. What I did during our year, we did a newsletter, and in the newsletter, there was a trivia question every single week, and the first person to respond correctly won a dollar scratch-off card. And the answer to the question was always in the newsletter. And typically the question was about what our program was. So all you had to do was scroll down the weekly email to find out what the program was and respond. So people were showing up to the Zoom calls because they wanted to see if they won the scratch-off lottery ticket that week. And so I will tell you, our attendance, during COVID, we had we had probably 80% attendance during COVID via Zoom because we were leading into the meeting with our weekly emails, with phone calls, with follow-ups. But Patrick said I did a really good job of salesifying membership. And that's really how you have to kind of look at it, right? Membership is sales. And so encouraging your members to come to the meetings by giving them something to look forward to.
And it costs a whole dollar.
It cost me $1.
Nice.
And so we had 44 meetings. It cost me $44 to give everybody a scratch-off card.
Wow. Listen, those are all great ideas. You all have done a great job of answering the questions. The gallery has done a great job of coming up with questions. There's plenty of comments in the chat, and there's just not enough time to get to all of them. We've got them all preserved. If there's something that folks really have a burning desire to have answered, again, I invite them to bring them to me by email, telephone call, smoke signal, however you can get them to me, and I'll do my best to gather up the best answers for you I can. So let's leave it with this. Remember, if we're going to be making our clubs, as Stephanie Yurchik says, irresistible, we need to be sure to give our members every opportunity to try something new rather than doing the same thing over and over, only because that's always the way we've done it. I think we can all agree with that. So with that said, Andy, I'm going to turn the spotlight back over to you. Thank you all very much for a fantastic discussion. You can start wrapping us up, Andy, if you would.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. Thanks for leading our webinar this month. And thank you, Patrick and Lisa, for sharing how Rotary has impacted you personally. If you've missed any part of this webinar, you can watch by going to the RI Zones 33-34.org/membership-action-plan website. The February webinar, Confident Club Leadership, will be on Monday, February the 3rd at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Yes, that's earlier in the month due to a number of the Membership Action Plan team being at the International Assembly event. Again, February's Membership Action Plan webinar will be on Monday, February the 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can register using the link in the chat, and we'll see you then.